fervent patriot who longed for his country's independence, this man dedicated nearly his entire life to fighting for change in his homeland to lead it to freedom. But just 6 months before independence, before that famous independence, he was assassinated by a fellow citizen. Now the tale of Cabral, 26 characters. Amilcar Lopes da Costa Cabral was born in Portuguese Guinea, which is now Guinea-Bissau. He completed much of his education in Cape Verde, since his father was Cape Verdean and his mother from Guinea-Bissau. So he had his schooling and enjoyed a typical childhood. However, during the war years, the nation faced a brutal drought that resulted in an unprecedented famine, leading to almost 50,000 deaths. With complete indifference. I mean utter indifference. The Portuguese colonial powers were completely unconcerned, and the young boy was truly touched, deciding he needed to make a change. So, in the years that follow, he will go to Portugal, specifically to Lisbon, to study agronomy, so he can return home and create change. Upon arriving in Lisbon, the young man studies, but like any young African in the West, he makes friends with other young Africans, including Ghanaians and Angolans and Congolese, Africans from various places. Together, he sits and chats, realizing that black values are not respected enough, black life is not valued enough, so he begins to have ideas very close to negritude, very similar to those promoted by figures like Marcus Garvey. So together, he decides to create an association aimed at promoting black culture. So, we are now getting closer and closer to encountering a struggle. In the end, the real project is to advocate for the independence of African nations on the continent. Thus, Amilcar Cabral, he is completely dedicated to his cause, fully engaged in his side activities while studying, yet he hasn't lost sight of why he came to Portugal. In 1952, he successfully obtains his agronomy diploma. He gets a great offer to work in Portugal as a researcher, with good pay, but he decides to return to his home country. After returning home, Amilcar Cabral works as an agronomist, but the job isn't very fulfilling for him because it doesn't pay well. It's not necessarily a position where he can do everything he wants, but he accepts the job. And while working, this position allows him to travel across the country to understand the realities and problems involving agronomy, if you will. But the young man has a long-term outlook. He benefits from this opportunity to travel the country, to fully understand the social, societal, and governmental realities, because he has a significant project for the country. So this is how he will to actually go to the regions of Ointen, visiting little villages and towns to notice the divisions within the country between the black and mixed-race citizens of Guinea-Bissau. These divisions are due to the abuses committed by the Portuguese colonial forces. He gathers this information and decides he wants to create an association to uplift the culture of Guinea-Bissau. He pitches the project to the colonial leader, of course. The Portuguese authorities firmly refuse because they see it as a threat. It could awaken consciousness and encourage the people of Guinea-Bissau to rise up. So, they categorically refuse. Worse still, they will force him into exile because this young man is already starting to cause trouble. So he goes into exile, settling in Angola, where he works for another company for a while. In 1956, the Portuguese colonial forces at last let him return to the country. When he comes back, he decides to form a political party called the PAIGC, together with other friends. The PAIGC stands for the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. Thus, he will form it with other key figures like Luis Cabral, his half-brother and future president of Guinea-Bissau, and Aristide Pereira, future president of Cape Verde, Alio Duarte, future minister and president of the National Assembly of Cape Verde, and Élisée Turpin. Thus, the PAIGC he created with his friends is a party that starts as an association and has a very pacifist nature. They aim to change things. They genuinely want to educate the population and convey messages of positivity and empowerment. In opposition to them are the Portuguese colonial forces, who do not respond favorably. The Portuguese colonial forces perpetrate abuses against the people. The Portuguese forces do things that are really lamentable and very destructive. This will actually lead to frustration within Amilcar Cabral. At some point, he will understand that in front of him, he faces people who are closed off to dialogue and those who resist discussion. Thus, The PAIGC, which is a peaceful party, a normal party, will become one. For nearly 10 years, they will stand up to Portugal. For nearly 10 years, the PAIGC, led by Amilcar Cabral, will occupy 70% of Guinea-Bissau's territory and a bit of Cape Verde. And so, in this time, Amilcar Cabral will not merely focus on fighting. In the regions occupied by Amilcar Cabral, he will work hard to educate the people and display the culture of Guinea-Bissau and help them learn to genuinely respect themselves. He will create hospitals, establish healthcare centers, and develop industries to prepare these regions for independence. However, that's not everything. Amilcar Cabral understands one thing. He battled the Portuguese, established the PAIG, and they are making changes, but he realizes that things will remain the same until his party is acknowledged in democratic terms. So what does he do? In the afternoon, they will begin actions with the UN to ensure the PAIGC is recognized as an entity, democratically, as a fully fledged party, and not an entity that is just an urban guerrilla or an armed faction. So, the negotiations will progress quickly, and once the PAIGC is recognized as a complete political party, as a political entity, it will truly alter the situation. But as with many stories of African fighters, like many African leaders who wished to resist colonial oppression, Amilcar Cabral was assassinated on January 20th at the end of the war by a member of the armed group within the PAIG, the party he started. Naturally, you can imagine that the strings are pulled from Lisbon, which shows he was an enemy of Amilcar Cabral. But the saddest thing in this story is that this man dedicated almost his life for liberation. He dedicated almost all his life to his people's welfare, but he murdered one of his compatriots. So, the circumstances of his murder are still quite unclear, not clear as usual. But for the anniversary of his assassination, RFI interviewed his wife. This happened a few weeks back, and I will allow you to listen to this excerpt. You will hear some rather unsettling details. I cannot tell you exactly who killed her because I lack the information, and I will not delve into that madness. Listen to the excerpt.
Good day to you, Ana Maria Cabral. Greetings. On January 20th, you are in Conakry with Amilcar Cabral. What memories do you keep from that day before the tragic events of the night?
I received information from reliable agents that I consider friendly. It was me who didn't know anything, but I noticed he was quite troubled that day. He seemed very concerned. Afterward, there was a reception, if I'm not mistaken, at the Polish embassy. He didn't usually go to receptions, but he told me this time, exceptionally, let's go, especially since we've never received help from Poland. So let's go, to remind them that we also need their solidarity. So we went there, and I realized he didn't want to leave, as if he had a premonition that it was the last day of his life. He spoke to everyone, including ambassadors and other diplomats, and showed no desire to leave.
He didn't want to leave. Is it true you wish to carry a gun for safety to the reception at the Polish embassy, but Amilcar Cabral prevented you from doing so?
Yes, it's true. I wanted to bring a gun, but he didn't allow it because I understood something was happening. I didn't know what was going on. I had no information, but he didn't allow us to take the gun. And he also didn't accept any security agents with us. So we went there, just the two of us, without a gun or any security. After the reception, we came back to the house adjacent to the PAIGC Secretariat, and there we saw the house was under siege.
What happened when you returned? What did you see?
He understood that the house was under siege. I thought they were just the usual security agents, but that wasn't the case. They got near him. They tried to bind him. I learned afterward that their pact with Spinola was to deliver the top PAGS leaders, that there would be Portuguese boats off the coast of Conakry to take them to Bissau to be handed over to Spinola. They wanted to tie up Cabral, but he said, "No, don't tie me up." They started to argue. If there are problems, he said, "Let's sit down at the Secretariat and talk. But binding me is not an option. We won't repeat the colonialist mistake." At one moment he declared, "I'd prefer to be killed than to be bound." And then Inocencio Cani seized the opportunity and immediately fired at Amilcar. I don't exactly remember how many shots were fired in total, except that the autopsy report stated there were 8 or 9 bullets in his body, it seems to me.
So there you have it. You've heard the excerpt and can make your own judgment. The key point of this video was to learn about Amilcar Cabral's story. This man is someone who, from an early age, really wanted his country to be looked at positively, to be in a better situation. And when he had the means to do so, he went abroad to study. He returned to make a difference. He fought for his country's independence. He was assassinated just 6 months before independence by one of his fellow countrymen. I hope you liked this video. Don't hesitate to subscribe to the page on YouTube. Feel free to subscribe here. Also, check out the Instagram I set up just for a rest story. I post videos there because I've noticed that for some time now, I don't know if it's a glitch or if something is wrong. Regardless, I've uploaded several videos that got 0 views. Subscribers aren't seeing them. I made another TikTok account to check if the videos would appear. They aren't showing up. I don't know if it's sabotage or if someone reported it. But in any case, to avoid all that, I'm also reposting the videos on Instagram. I'll leave you all the information in the video. Until then, take care, leave me a comment, and we'll say ciao ciao.